Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. And now if we pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nuwan.
Here.
Council Broderick.
Here.
Council Elliott.
Here.
Council Kennedy.
Here.
Council Laurie.
Here.
Council Martin.
Here.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Here. Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
We have a moment of silence. No. Council Laurie.
Thank you. Yeah, I have 2 tonight. One is for Rose Pilato, lifelong resident of the city. She lived in the back Central Street area as far as I knew the Pilatos. Her husband was George Pilato, who worked for the city for many years. She was a retiree of Raytheon, and she's survived by 5 children: Georgine, Diane, Joanne, and Lisa, Jackie, and she also has a son, George Pilato, who also works for the city. George drives a graffiti truck for the city. And she also was the mother of the late Francine Avila and the late Joe Pilato. And I also like to remember tonight Dave Harrigan. Dave was grew up in the city of Lowell. He grew up next to Washington Park. Dave was a letter carrier in the city. I worked with his father, John, for many years, and his mom worked here in City Hall. Dave was a great guy. He passed away last week, and he leaves his mother, Helen, his sister, Joanne, Robert Patrick Harrigan, Christopher Harrigan, many nieces and nephews. One is, of course, Eric Gitcher, who's on the Greater Lowell School Committee. I just want to remember Dave. He was a great guy and served the city for many years, and I have made it both rest in peace.
We could all stand for a moment of silence in darkened chambers.
Yeah, that was last week, last Tuesday.
We'll begin with the minutes of the last meeting.
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercier.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion's carried. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Before we begin into the city manager's portion of the agenda, I would like to ask my colleagues if I could suspend the rules to allow a woman, Heidi Curtis, to speak on a dangerous condition of the area in front of the Lowell Community Health Center on Merrimack Street. I believe it's Annelle's responsibility, but we could have the lady speak and we could refer this to the city manager. If Heidi Curtis could come to the podium and just tell us about this.
If you would just, for the record, state your name and address, please.
If I could have a second to,
Second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor of suspending rules say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. They're suspended.
Okay, my name's Heidi Mae Curtis. I live at 193 Moody. The reason why I'm bringing this to you guys' attention is little kids and people who's walking down that way can just fall. This hole is not like little, it is major. And I know they have like a brick or whatever you guys want to call it there to try to block it, but it's not. Even the brick right there now is ready to fall into the water. Now, this is not coming this from me, it's coming from a lot of other people that's not have the guts to come in front of you. So, I don't know who's really responsible for it, but I really would like to know if you guys can really get to the bottom of this, because this hole has been there for a while, and all it's doing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know other people owns it and everything, but this can't be going on. Because somebody's really gonna get hurt, and then the city's gonna get sued when there's no meaning for it to be, when it can be fixed. Thank you guys for letting me bring my concern to you.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Mercer?
Thank you very much. She said it all. A great job. I know that it's Annelle's responsibility, but it's our responsibility to get after them. I know it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but these are conditions around the city that need to be addressed. Every condition that is in derelicted condition isn't probably our fault, such as this case here, but it needs to be addressed, and we should do something. Thank you.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you. I don't know if it's feasible to do this, but could we have the law department draft a letter and let them know that exists and that we're receiving complaints from the people of Lowell? And whether it forces them to fix it quicker or not, I don't know. But if someone gets hurt, you know.
Just because it wasn't on the agenda, so I thought the thought was just to refer it to the
Refer
manager's
it.
office, and
Okay.
that's certainly something the manager could do.
Right.
Fine.
And
sure he'll do.
we could put on the agenda for the next meeting if necessary.
Thank you.
Could we have a motion?
Motion to refer this to the city manager.
Second by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Kennedy?
That sounds fine to do that. I know that we got photographs today, or at least I did, and I'm assuming everybody else did, and one of them was taken by Mr. Marchand, and so I'm assuming that the city manager's office is already doing something about this. But I guess the only thing I'd point out is that if this is a hazardous, I mean, you know, with summer here and kids out of school, I mean, you just get drawn to stuff like that. And so it's important that it be secure and that nobody is able to fall through. And in the pictures, the photographs that I saw, it didn't look like that was the case, but I just think that we should make sure that nothing like that can happen. And I concur with the idea of sending a letter to Annelle and having them act on it as soon as possible. Thanks.
Anyone else? All those in favor of referring it to the manager's office, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we are under suspension, the young adults from the UTAC would like to come and give one more final push for the Vote 17 campaign. Excuse me. So I request my colleagues suspend the rules and allow just one individual to come up and say a few more words about their rally on Thursday and their continued efforts to move this piece of legislation forward.
Okay, while we're still under the suspension of the rules, representative from UTEC, if you would state your name and address, please.
My name is Carly Kirksey, 31 Harrison Street. You guys see this? Oh, let me say our address.
Yeah, just
My name is Susan Lee, 240 Thorndike Street.
my name is Rachel Fields, 16 Wyoming Road.
So we'd just like to thank you for letting me speak. Something like this short and simple. As of last fall, we know that a Secretary of State had deemed our bill unconstitutional, but with months to spare, we were participating with the city solicitor, and we were trying to see what we can do to make our bill constitutional. And with the help of the city solicitor, she amended the bill, and now we successfully address the concerns of the Secretary of State. And so we would like to thank the city solicitor for all the help that she has done. And as we make our final push for our bill, we are having a rally June 28th at 12:45 in the Nurses Hall at the State House. And we would like to invite you all. We have Councilor Mercier, who is going to be a lovely speaker, and we greatly appreciate her for coming out and speaking. So we hope to see all you guys there, if that will be good. So thank you.
Thank you for the update. I did get the invitation. Unfortunately, I will be unable to attend, so I'm glad Councilor Mercer will be able to. If there are no objections, we're going to leave the executive session to just before the motions, and we'll continue with the agenda until then. All right, so returning to the agenda, next item would be the city manager's communication. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. This is, we received the communication from the manager, actually from Elliot Veloso, Assistant City Solicitor. I'm wondering, Madam Solicitor, if you could just, I did read through it, and it indicates there's, a dispute between National Grid and the city regarding permits. Can you just give us a quick recap as to, for the people at home, what this is about and what the issue is and how we're trying, trying to resolve it?
Certainly. The issue that was really flagged by the city engineer's office was that when National Grid was coming in for certain permitting, they were not coming in and coordinating with the city with respect to plans in terms of where the underground structures are and things of that nature. And so for safety reasons, the city engineer was of the opinion that, in pursuant to our own ordinances that we have on record, that was something that was required. Attorney Veloso and Lisa DeMeo worked on this issue. They've met with National Grid. They have, as my understanding, come to an agreement that they will, when applying for these types of permits, comply with the city ordinance, and they will come in with these sketches, and that's pretty much where the issue is at this particular stage.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. With National Grid, we're still having a problem with double poles, aren't we? I know, as Councilor Mendonça, you brought it up. We had over 150 double poles, I believe, in the city. It was well over 100, and I think you have 60 days to take them down. I haven't received, I think there was a report requested on that, and we're still getting nowhere, to my knowledge. Is there anything we can do to push this?
It's my understanding that there are going to be some follow-up meetings, and that's certainly something that both the city engineer and the law department can work on, maybe in the same fashion that they've worked through this issue, and try to get a more definitive answer and a more definitive commitment from National Grid with respect to the double pole issue.
Well, that'd be great,
We'll
thank you.
report back on that.
Great, thank you.
Just for informational purposes, I do intend to ask for another report at the 90-day mark to make sure that those that were in the last report have been taken care of.
Well, I know you brought it up and you had spearheaded that, and that's why I want to mention you had done it originally.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a report in here about upcoming installation of bicycle lanes, various major roadways throughout the city. I've received some inquiries concerned residents about losing parking spaces, particularly in front of their places of business. But according to this report, the lanes that are going to be installed are not intended to replace parking. The parking is still going to be allowed to remain in place. So I just want to follow up with someone from the manager's office that is in fact the case, so that residents can be assured and businesses can be assured they're not going to lose spaces out in front.
Mr. Mouse.
It's my understanding that these bicycle lanes will actually be located in between the travel lanes for the cars and the parking. So there won't be any loss of parking spaces, but Ms. Trad, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. And what about in places where there might, these are kind of outer areas of the city, at least the inquiries I've got, there aren't parking meters or parking spaces. I mean, cars do park there.
The bicycle lanes aren't dependent on controlled parking. They're designed to go wherever there is parking for, whatever terms.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to accept communication, place on file. Councilor Mercer, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, we have an out-of-state travel request. I have an out-of-state travel request for LPD to New Hampshire to send paperwork along. We'll send paperwork along in a minute. So one police department official to go to New Hampshire. Are there any questions?
Move to approve.
Council Broderick?
Move approval.
Move approval. Seconded by Council Laurie. Council Mercer.
Thank you, Joe. I know that the superintendent of police is here, and this travel request is because New England General Motors fleet, they're not having the Ford Crown Victoria anymore, and so the police department is sending 2 people to check out what would be efficient and things. And I know they're sending some people from the traffic engineer's office, but wouldn't a mechanic that services these vehicles be a more authority that would know more about cars than the traffic bureau? I don't know what the traffic bureau does, but I don't know. I would send a mechanic that would know more about efficiency, and I don't know, that maybe the chief would like to address that. Maybe he knows more than I do, but when I think of traffic bureau, I don't think of someone that knows about the make and model of vehicles and stuff.
Who are the individuals that are attending?
No, I'm not asking for names.
Well, I want to know, so I think one of them is the mechanic, counselor.
Well, it just said they're from the traffic bureau.
Well, I understand that, but that's where the mechanic is assigned. He works under the auspices of the traffic division. He's the fleet manager, and he works in that division. I believe when I signed that request that he was one of the people that was attending.
Well,
along
then I
with
feel better
Lieutenant
knowing
Crowley,
that.
yeah.
Oh, Timmy Crowley?
Lieutenant Crowley, and I believe Mr. Soprakos, who is our fleet manager, will be attending. He's our department mechanic. I believe that's who's attending.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes more sense then. I didn't know.
Mr. Moses, do you have the name in that?
The communication doesn't list the individuals.
It doesn't, okay.
Just says 2
Yeah, I believe that's who
individuals.
we intend to send, yeah. Both Lieutenant Crowley and Mr. Soprakos, who's our fleet manager and mechanic, and they will make the determination on which crews would be, most appropriate for us now that the Crown Victoria is being phased out.
Well, that makes more sense to me now that I know
Okay.
who. Thank you.
No, well, we have the, thank
Council
you.
Laurie.
Well, we have the chief here. When we get a request from the police department, we usually don't have names on it, do we?
No, we don't.
I wouldn't
Some
want
do.
the police to
Typically,
put
we
the-
don't, right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want the police to be putting names on the request on who's going, just by virtue of the job you're doing. when
No, I
they're
understand.
away.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, no, it was just a question I had, thank you.
Could I respond to that, Mr. Mayor,
Council Mercer.
Mr. Vice Mayor? I'm not saying that I want
Oh, no,
names
no,
of the
no,
people, but I want to be a little bit clearer than saying traffic bureau. If it said the mechanic from the traffic bureau, I could have accepted that and not
Right.
said a word, but that's my concern. Thank you.
No, I agree with Councilor Mercy. It wasn't because of that. It was just, I don't remember seeing really names and be virtue of the job that they do, and basically saying they're going to be out of town for a week.
No, I
Yeah,
understand
that's-
that.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendoza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next is the resolution. In City Council, a resolution in support of equity and transparency in state energy efficiency programs. It is the interest of the nation, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the City of Lowell to reduce the human health, financial, and environmental impacts resulting from the use of energy resources. And the City of Lowell has made great commitments to energy efficiency through comprehensive climate action and sustainability planning, strong community processes, and community engagement. Partnerships with numerous organizations, academic institutions, and planning agencies, and specific programming for individuals, businesses, restaurants, historic buildings, and maximizing the adoption of energy efficiency measures requires partnerships that only span financial, educational, industrial, labor, and municipal sectors, but also takes into account a population diverse in income, race, cultural origin, and economic class. And many cost-saving health and environmental benefits have accrued to the residents and municipal government of Lowell from the state's existing energy efficiency program created by the Green Communities Act, and research by advocacy groups has nonetheless demonstrated that significant segments of the city, including low to moderate income residents, non-English speakers, renters, and communities of color, may not be able to access the program's benefits equitably. And the City of Lowell recognizes and applauds the diversity existing within its own population and proposed legislative and regulatory changes that at the state level improve program transparency and access of residents of Lowell to energy efficiency programs, and equity and transparency in state programs affect the ability of local governments to grant or enhance such access, as well as the ability of the state to meet its climate emissions reduction obligations stemming from Global Warming Solutions Act. Be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the City of Lowell be on record supporting legislative and regulatory improvements at the state level that expand access of all residents of Lowell to state energy efficiency programs, particularly requirements for efficiency program administrators to report sufficient program data to allow for assessment of the program's effectiveness. This resolution, adopted by the City Council of the City of, adopted by vote of the City Council of Lowell on this day, June 2012. Second reading by title. A resolution in support of equity and transparency in state energy efficiency programs.
Move we adopt, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Of adoption by Council Kennedy, second by Council Broderick. Any discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nguyen.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendoza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to apply expend grant. In City Council, vote authorizing the city manager acting through the Department of Planning and Development to apply for, accept, and expend a grant in the amount of $499,000 from the Municipal and Community Restoration Grant Fund through the Massachusetts Attorney General's Home Corps Partnership Grant Program. The Massachusetts Attorney General Home Corps Partnership Grant has made available grant funds to support the city's receivership program, and the City of Lowell desires to apply for, accept, and expend grants for the Municipal and Community Restoration Grant Fund through the Massachusetts Attorney General's Home Corps Partnership Program to support the receivership program in an effort to address the deterioration of properties left abandoned as a result of foreclosure. Be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the city manager, acting through the Department of Planning and Development, is authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to apply for, accept, and expend the grant in the amount of $499,000 from Municipal Community Restoration Grant Fund through the Massachusetts Attorney General's Home Corps Partnership Grant Program. Be it further voted that the city manager, on behalf of the city of Lowell, is authorized to execute and any and all documents necessary in connection with the above grant. Second reading by title. Vote authorizing the city manager, acting through the Department of Planning and Development, to apply for, accept, and expend the grant in the amount of $499,000 from the Municipal and Community Restoration Grant Fund through the Massachusetts Attorney General's Home Corps Partnership Grant Program. Council Lori, move approval. Second by Councilor Martin. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I reported as part of the Housing Subcommittee that I chair about a month or so ago, we were able to complete rehab of a house on 6th Street in a program that these funds will go to. So I know it was very much welcomed by the neighborhood. It was an abandoned property and put back into productive use. They think it actually led to improvements of surrounding properties. So the fact that we have potentially more funding to do more things like that is all to the good. So thank the people at DPD for the work on this, and hopefully we get the grant.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nuwan.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have order 60-day trial. Okay. We'll hold off on that. Being 7 o'clock, we'll go to the public hearings. We have some utility public hearings. First is Comcast of Southern New England Incorporated requesting placing conduit along Merrimack Street. We'll open a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Jody Gaudette with Comcast. We're looking to place a conduit system to provide service to the occupants of 45 Merrimack Street. We've been in contact with the DPW and, working out the design and stuff like that, and I did submit the engineered drawings as required by the city. That's about it.
Anyone else to speak in favor? In favor? That portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That portion of the public hearing is closed. Wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Broderick.
Refer to the wire
To refer to the wire inspector.
inspector.
Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Mercier. And roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nuwan.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas. 1 absent.
Next public hearing is National Grid and Verizon New England Incorporated. Request pole location on 10th Street. We'll open a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor.
Good evening. My name is Dan Damaris. I work for National Grid of 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover. We received a request from the resident at 52 10th Street that there was a leaning pole and they were concerned about it falling over. So National Grid would like to replace that pole and to place an anchor in order to alleviate the situation in the future.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? That portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Wish of the body? Motion.
I have a question of this gentleman.
Council Mercer.
You're not replacing the pole, you're putting like an anchor?
We'll be, excuse me, we will be replacing the pole and we will be replacing an anchor.
All right, thank you.
Motion to refer to the wire inspector. Council Mercer, second by Council Noon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carried. Next public hearing, National Grid, request to install 2 poles on Edward Street. Open a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor.
Good evening, Dan Damaris, National Grid, 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover. National Grid would like to set a couple of poles on Edward Street in order to continue servicing the resident at number 35 and also the ball fields that are located behind that property. We'd like to place the poles and the anchors, again, to continue serving those customers.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Now open it for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. In opposition. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Wish of the body?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Move to refer to the wire inspector.
Yes.
By Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now returning to the agenda, the order for 60-day trial. Motion to waive the full reading by
So moved,
Councilor
Mr. Chairman.
Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. In City Council, order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6 entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. Second reading by title. In City Council, order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of the Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. What is the wish of the
Approval,
body?
Mr. Chairman.
Move approval by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Laurie. Any discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nuwan.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendoza.
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 absent.
Next is to vote of memorandum of understanding. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Mercier. In City Council, vote authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of 3 memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and the Merrimack Valley Employees Association, covering one Unit 1 operators, maintenance employees, Unit 2 head operators, etc., and Unit 2 professionals. Second reading by title. And City Council, vote authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of 3 memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and the Merrimack Valley Employees Association, covering the Unit 1 operators, maintenance employees, Unit 2 head operators, etc., and Unit 2 professionals.
Move to ratify, Mr. Chairman.
Move to ratify by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Moses, can you explain the terms of this agreement and what the adjustments are going to be and what the cost is?
Sure. The terms of this agreement are similar to the other agreements that the council has seen and approved for the period up to June 30th, 2012. The major terms are 0 pay increases for fiscal year 2012 and 2011, the year prior to that. Other minor language changes, we've moved to standardize accruals of sick time as of January 1st, instead of varying by contract. And these 3 units, there was a minor stipend change in them. All the funding, there really was no funding, but it was all contained in the 2012 budget, so there's no appropriation with it.
So these just bring us through last fiscal year, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, through the end of this fiscal year.
Excuse
It's good
me,
for a few
end
more
of-
days.
End of this fiscal year, which ends this week.
Right.
Councilor Kennedy.
So these are retro contracts that bring us up to date with no increase. But the stipend is increased by $200 to $1,000. What, is that right?
By 200 to 1,000.
To 1,000.
Right.
That's
Okay.
what I said, or what I meant to say anyway. When do you get that stipend? What is that for?
Well, they have to actually qualify and have certification. It's an annual payment, and not all. I don't think all people in the unit actually qualify, and it's. I'm not sure what the payment date is.
Okay, but it's a one-time thing?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Council Nuam.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
We have another memorandum of understanding with Local 1705A through the end of this fiscal year. Move to waive the full reading by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Laurie. In City Council, vote authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and Local 1705A, AFSCME, Council 93, AFL-CIO, covering the period of July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012. Second reading by title in City Council. Vote authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and Local 1705A, AFSCME, Council 93, AFL-CIO, covering the period July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012. Wish of the body, Councilor Laurie, move approval, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion or questions? Councilor Kennedy.
To Mr. Moses, you know, I understand that maybe you're not going to know the answers, but just the uniform allowance, was that in prior contracts, or is that a new thing?
Yes, it was in prior contracts. These are nurses, and they have certain clothing expenses associated with their work.
And so is this an increase for them?
It is
Or is it just set a limit?
it's a increase, but it is I believe it's a reimbursement for actual expenses, so it's up to that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily $300 for every employee every year.
But if you go and buy that, then you get reimbursed up to that
Right.
amount. Yep, okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next item, in City Council, vote authorizing the city manager to execute a limited access agreement between the City of Lowell and Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated relative to 49 to 55 Rock Street. The City of Lowell owns the property at 4955 Rock Street. Lowell and Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated has requested access to the property for the purpose of utilizing the site to begin pre-construction work before the organization takes full ownership of the property, and a limited access agreement for such a purpose is needed, and the City of Lowell is willing to grant limited access to Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated, its employees, agents, and contractors access to the property for the purpose of utilizing the site to begin pre-construction work. Be it voted by 2/3 vote of the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the city manager be and is hereby authorized to execute a limited access agreement between the City of Lowell and the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated, its employees, agents, and contractors relative to the property at 49 through 55 Rock Street. Second reading by title. In City Council, a vote authorizing the city manager to execute a limited access agreement between the City of Lowell and Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell Incorporated relative to 49 to 55 Rock Street. Wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Any questions or discussions? Roll call.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
In City Council, order to transfer funds to cover invoices for outside counsel, ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $117,987.99 be transferred from court judgments account number 0151-4163-576001 to professional services account number 0151-4153-530000, ordered, recommended, and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. In City Council vote. Order the transfer of funds to cover invoices for outside counsel in the amount of $117,987.99. Wish of the council, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Chair. Could we get an explanation about these invoices, and how could we spend $117,000 without an appropriation?
Mr. Moses.
Or, excuse me, without money being in that appropriation?
Okay, that, the bulk of that money, about 114,000, comes from one case, and since it is a case that's pending, I'm going to turn it over to the solicitor.
Sure. There are actually two cases and that this money comes from, and both of these represent actually just a short period of time in terms of the billing. So while we understood what the per hour rate of outside counsel would be, again, it's very difficult once you have outside counsel to control what those costs are in terms of how much time they put into a case, how many documents they're going to be reviewing, how long they're going to spend with the individuals that they're representing. So this sum, which goes to a single firm that specializes in this type of, in this area, actually represents 2 cases, and I believe it's 2 cases over 2 months or 2.5 months of services.
What kind of cases are they? What are we spending this money to defend?
These are both charges that were filed at the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, and right now they're in their investigative stages.
So who gave the authority to do this without any money? I mean, we have a law department to do this. Why do we go to outside counsel for this? Is this relative to the library?
One of them is.
One of them? What's the other one?
A matter in the police department.
Okay.
The reason that we have outside counsel, we are involved in the case as well. In fact, myself and another attorney. Our filings alone are probably 80 pages long at this point. However, in both cases, we're representing the interest of the city, and there are other parties, other city employees that are involved, and because of conflict issues, it's necessary to go and get outside counsel because their interests may eventually be separate from ours.
This is a lot of money. I mean, you're saying this is 2 months, $117,000. We just sit here through hours and hours trying to cut the budget here, and it's not controllable. It's difficult to sit here and say to vote for this when we have, I think, many attorneys. I mean, why do we have attorneys when we're spending so much on professional services? I mean, this is utterly ridiculous, in my opinion.
Well, if I could respond, I totally agree in the sense that this is a large sum of money. However, it's a sum of money, or the choice of getting outside counsel is one that was made out of necessity. Again, we are actively involved in this case.
What was the necessity? I just want to, I don't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
I'm sorry, but what is?
Again, when you have, in both of these cases, there are other parties aside from the city, and say, instances where you might have the city manager, you might have a police chief, you might have a school superintendent. We typically represent all of those parties. However, we don't necessarily represent the interest of individual employees because at any given time, the facts of a case may diverge and their interests are separate from ours. And so we have to ensure that they have their own counsel and that they have adequate counsel, and we represent the interest of the city. Again, just in one case alone, the city filings probably are about 80 pages long at this point in time, and it's comparable for the other side as well. So it was absolutely out of necessity that we do this. We do this periodically, and again, you can see the benefit of having in-house counsel because of these costs. These costs are, they're very, very significant. And it's only in rare cases that we actually have to go to outside counsel. And the number of instances in which we go to outside counsel are cases where, again, because of the necessity of avoiding conflicts, that's why we do it.
So
that's what we did here.
One of these cases is we're spending the money to defend the city manager, right? Is he? Because that's the communication we have received in the past.
No, actually, the city manager is represented by the law department, and the city is represented by the law department. These costs are to represent employees of the city, whose interests may eventually be separate from our own. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that we have to approach those things from the perspective that may happen. And that's the case for both of these. Both of these cases, it was the same conclusion that as a result of a potential conflict, we had to obtain outside counsel to represent the interest of the individual employees that are also involved in this matter, because they've been sued by, in both cases, fellow employees.
So moving forward, because then there's another transfer that transfers more money into professional services, the following one. But
in the second one,
right. So we're looking at putting $133,000 into professional services. But what are we going to do to stop this? I mean,
if I can, the other is just to be clear. The other isn't for attorney's fees. The other professional services is for a physician that we utilized as an expert witness in a matter.
Okay.
And that actually doesn't even cover all of it, but that was part of his payment.
Okay. I understand, but when I look at, if I look at the org code and I see all the money going in, I
Oh,
just
no, I
have to
understand.
raise the
That's
question.
why I wanted to just clarify
So,
that.
is there a way, moving forward, when when outside counsel is needed, that we execute a fixed price or fixed cost contract to say, look, we need you, but, you know, this isn't going to be a runaway freight train that, you know, you're just going to continue to, I mean, there's no way to justify how many hours are really needed or necessary, and then we just keep getting bills. I mean, this is a staggering amount.
It is. I mean, quite frankly, one of the largest costs that we face when we have lawsuits is in the event that we don't prevail. And in certain cases, we will be responsible not just for the cost, but we'll also be responsible for the attorney's fees of the prevailing party. We will get attorney's fees at times of anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 on a case, sometimes that in the end, if we have successfully managed it, the damages might be very low, but the attorney's fees are high. And then we've also attempted to go after the attorney's fees. Those are in cases where we are representing the interest of the city. In these, we can try to explore that type of arrangement. I don't know how successful we will be. I mean, we want to get the counsel that we have in this particular matter. She's an excellent outside counsel. She was the former head of. She was chief legal counsel to the MCAD at one point in time. She's thoroughly versed in this area. We can explore whether something like that is possible down the road to try to control the cost of outside counsel, but they're very expensive costs, no matter how you.
So who makes the decision to spend this money, or really to overspend that account?
We make the decision to hire outside counsel
Who
when
does?
it's
You?
when it's
You
when it's
and the
needed.
manager?
Correct. I mean, it'll be based on a recommendation from me that ethically we cannot represent the interest of all parties here, and out of necessity we will have to go and get outside counsel. And that's what we did in these two cases. Again, it's a small percentage of cases in which we have to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you to the city solicitor. So, first of all, this money's already been spent, or at least we've been billed for this money already. Is it the case that whenever we embark on litigation with employees that we pay for their counsel too?
Generally, that's the case.
Okay.
What we do is, and this is in this case as well, in the event that there is a change of circumstances, facts that we might not have been aware of at the beginning of any sort of litigation, we have let outside counsel know that at any time we can reserve our right to not pay the bills as they go along. The difficulty in these cases is if we didn't pay some of these outside counsel fees up front as they're going along, the employees obviously wouldn't be able to shoulder these bills, and the bills are too significant for an attorney to then absorb and carry on their own.
All right, so when you say in general, you mean just about every time, right?
Just about every time. There are other arrangements that have made. For example, in civil rights cases, the police officers have a law enforcement trust fund, which takes care of ongoing legal fees. And but in the end, we do entertain and enter into indemnification, and we have in every single case, ultimately. And there was one case where there was an issue, but you know, 99.9% of the time, those are all taken care of.
What about in an instance where, and maybe this seldom happens, but an instance where somebody is suing one of the city's employees, but not the city? Would we pay for the attorney fees in that case?
Depending on what the nature of the allegations were, if the nature of the allegation had to do with a criminal matter, which has happened in the past, I can think of one case that's probably about 10 years old where somebody was brought up on criminal charges that was an employee, but the charges actually arose from their official duties. We did not pay those. It was challenged and we prevailed. But in cases of negligence, for example, which would typically be the case, we would pay for those. In the past, with other MCAD cases, we have also reimbursed ultimately the attorney's fees for those. And in those cases, when we have settled, well, I guess your example is the city's not in it, but we really haven't had too many cases like that. But one that I can think of involved criminal charges, and that one we did not pay. And
Okay.
we were successful in it.
All right. I guess I would imagine if you were gonna sue the employee, you'd probably wanna sue the city too, just because the city has deeper pockets than,
Correct, that's the case most of the time. However, there are several instances where we might be dismissed from a lawsuit early on, but we continue to assist the employee in the case as well.
okay, and just one final question, it's just like, Councilor Elliott makes a case that, these are uncontrollable costs, and they could, at certain times, be huge. Are we able to buy insurance? Are you able to buy insurance that would cap legal fees? And do we do that, or can we do that, and is it expensive, is it exorbitant, or have you ever looked into that, or?
We actually sought bids last year and worked with some insurance professionals, actually, a broker that got several quotes. The policies can be very expensive. For us, the policies ran from $1 million to $2 million per year in premiums. And each of the policies had some deficiencies. There were certain exclusions, certain deductibles, and in a couple of cases, there were some questions on the insurance company submitting the bid. As you can see, we have a budget of a couple of $100,000, and in this case, we're actually exceeding it by several $100,000. This might not even be a typical year, it might be worse. But a policy at, let's say, $1.5 million, you're guaranteed to spend that $1.5 million. So it's very, very expensive. There is a pool through MIA, Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Agency or Association. Unfortunately, we're too big. We're above their size, and they'll only insure smaller communities. We approach them as well.
Okay. Have we ever thought of trying to set up the same type of group with cities that are our size? I mean, I assume everybody faces the same problem, and I guess it sounds like, although the costs are high, that we're still way better off than if we bought the insurance, if the insurance is $1 million. So, however, the very fact that you looked into it last year or a couple of years ago makes me think that you thought that they were high as well, which is why you would look into it. And to look into doing it with a group of communities or whatever, if we're too large for them, would it make any sense, or would it be feasible for us to try to form our own group with, say, half a dozen cities and do it that way and maybe cut costs, and maybe everybody does well if we did that? Does that?
We can take a look at that. Yeah, the one thing that struck us was not necessarily the amount that we were spending, but the fact that both you and Councilor Elliott recognized that it's unpredictable and can spike up. And we were looking at the possibility of paying a known amount and enabling certainty within our budget. That was the appealing part to us.
Okay.
But that's an idea that we can explore.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further discussion, roll call.
Mayor?
We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Broderick. Roll call. Oh, wait, Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, just in the future, two of these transfers have, or one of the three have an explanation. Can you tell me why we didn't get an explanation? We're asked to transfer, this money, and, this one and the next one, there's no explanation as to what the money is being used for. So I don't know if I have to make a motion, but any future transfers, I would like to see an explanation as to why there's surplus in one and why there's a deficit in the other, and why we're making the, excuse me, why we're making the transfer. I mean, I was scratching my head, looking at this stuff over the weekend. I guess it was a long-winded question. Why we get explanation in one and not in the other two?
I thought it was a statement. I can only speak for the transfer that I submitted. I usually put a cover memo on the ones I submit. The others were requested by the law department, and I think maybe the sensitive nature of some of those might have entered into it.
The one before us is for outside counsel, correct?
Sure. I mean, going forward, as far as any transfers required from the law department, we can certainly make certain to have an explanation on ours.
Okay, well, I mean...
And for all of them, I would assume.
You run the city. I mean, the manager's response, it's under your portion of the agenda, so I understand you take care of yours, but if it's under your portion of the agenda, then it just seems that it's your responsibility to tell them to provide an explanation. I mean, they work for you. So...
When this was submitted, I was an acting manager.
New sheriff in town now, though, right?
Okay, roll call?
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
No.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendoza.
Yes.
7 yeas.
Next is another transfer. Vote in City Council. Order to transfer funds to cover shortfalls in various accounts. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $184,000 be transferred from various accounts, all of which is set forth in Attachment A, to various accounts, all of which is set forth in Attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernarda Flench, City Manager.
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, I understand that these two are just to wrap things up at the end of the year and straighten out all of the accounts, and that's all fine. However, Councilor Elliott makes a good point, and even though it wasn't under your watch, it still should be that there should be a little bit more than what there is. Just various accounts really doesn't. It would be good if councilors are interested in knowing where the money's coming from and where it's going to, then it should be provided to them. And so it would be good to get a little bit more than what was provided this week on these two things.
Okay, I was just going to say that's more my fault than anyone else's, and so I'll make sure that, again, when we, on the rare instances that we have transfers, and hopefully they are rare, but we'll get a more thorough explanation so you know exactly what's going on, and you don't have to spend the weekend scratching your head looking at it and wondering, where are all these costs coming from and what accounts for them all. So,
thanks.
I agree.
Councilor Elliott.
That would be helpful. Maybe I exaggerated a little bit because I had a wedding this weekend, so I wasn't thinking about it all that much. But can you tell me, and I know I've asked this question before about workers' comp, particularly in the school side, how much did we budget this year? And again, this is one of these areas where I know it's under your jurisdiction, but it seems it's one of these budget items that we are having a very difficult time controlling, and it's a lot of money. So.
Right.
Yeah, and the budget this year was $425,000 originally. The council remembers during the budget deliberations, I had put together a history, I think going back to 2004, of several of these accounts that can fluctuate fairly wildly, including unemployment, workers' comp, the medical costs of retired and active public safety officers, and court judgments. Obviously, you know, a big case, whether it's a workers' comp case or a liability case in court, can spike up these costs in any one year. Generally, you don't have a large workers' comp and unemployment and court judgments all at once. Over time, these accounts fluctuate, but you can pretty much count on $500,000 to $600,000 of expense a year. You just don't know which accounts are going to get hit in any particular year. That was the point of showing you that history, that even though there's substantial variation in individual accounts, the total remains relatively stable. And this is a particular case this year where we have some high workers' comp claims, low unemployment claims, and some medical costs that we can slide over to cover those bills. By the way, in defense of the city solicitor, these bills have not yet been paid. We're transferring the money so that we can pay those bills. So there really hasn't been actual deficit spending. We have incurred a liability in excess of the appropriation.
Further discussion. Second reading by title. Vote order to transfer funds to cover shortfalls in various accounts in the amount of $184,000. Any other questions? Roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendoza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next transfer. In City Council, order to transfer funds to cover year-end payroll deficits. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $128,100 be transferred from various accounts, all of which are set forth in Attachment A, to various accounts, all of which are set forth in Attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. In City Council, vote, order to transfer funds to cover year-end payroll deficits in the amount of $128,100. Wish of the council.
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Kennedy, second by Council Broderick. Councilor Elliott.
So these are areas that were overspent, right, Mr. Moses?
That's correct.
Madam Auditor, how can that happen? How do you allow that to happen?
We can't prevent it from happening. When somebody retires and they have several weeks of accrued vacation, we are under obligation either by union contract, by ordinance, or by state and federal law to pay those amounts. When that happens, there isn't an immediate deficit, but we know that as we approach the end of the year and we run out of payroll cycles, that eventually there will be a deficit. We do all we can during the year to identify funds to transfer in to cover these deficits, or in some cases there are mitigating circumstances where there may be another vacancy and there's some savings there because the person leaving didn't have accrued vacation, and the position is held open for weeks or months. So we hold them to the end of the year and try and take care of them all at once.
So all of these are a result of people retiring or leaving because of vacation time that's accrued?
Except a sick buyback. That's a contractual provision in the budget. It's all one account. And throughout the year, employees, mostly public safety, most police and fire, when they retire, but occasionally other employees when they have the sick buyback. Remember, we're trying to phase this out in some of these contracts.
Yeah, so Human Resources, why is there an $7,900 deficit? That makes no sense to me. I mean, Madam Auditor, how can you let that, how can that go through the system?
Okay,
No, I want to ask Auditor, Mayor, I want to ask the Auditor, how can that go through the system?
In not all instances are we already in the deficit. We have not posted 2 payrolls for the end of the fiscal year, so not all of these are in deficit. And legally, we have 10 days to pay an employee once they've actually done the work for the city. So this is what
Well, somebody's obligating with money not being there. If you're telling someone to make a staff change and money is not be there, you can't do that, whether you pay it at the end of the year or not. You're still spending above the appropriation. And whoever makes that decision should be checking on that first. Correct?
Yes, but in most of these instances, as in the mayor's office, it's due to paying out accrued sick and vacation.
Okay, what
for
about the Human Resources
that
Office?
left? That I don't have the analysis on. I can get you an analysis on that.
Well, I'd like it before I vote on it.
City clerk, obviously, we know we had to pay out accruals on that. The engineers, we have not overspent yet. We have 2 payrolls left, and the same with the recreation department.
Okay, what about $8,000 in Human Resources? Why is there such a deficit there? This says because of, I'll read it.
I'm not, that I don't have the information, I can get you the information.
Resulted in an HR deficit and corresponding surplus in the manager's department. Why is that? Mr. Moses?
I can answer that if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I would.
Mr. Moses, please.
It's in my cover memo. It says, and I'll read it to you.
I just read it.
Staffing changes resulted in the HR deficit and corresponding surplus in the manager's department. If you remember, we had HR director leave, and we had another assistant leave. We moved personnel from the city manager's office into the HR office to cover that vacancy, and his salary moved with it. The net cost was actually a savings. It's just they were in 2 different departments within the city manager's personnel.
So you had 2 people leave, 1 person go, and with a smaller salary, and there's a deficit. The problem is the person moved over and got a raise. Correct?
The person.
Yes or no?
The person who left the manager's office was given extra money to assume dual duties of his previous position and the assistant HR director.
And you knew there was going to generate a deficit in this department.
We did not.
How would you not know that?
We had, as I said, we had people leave, accrued vacation payouts, and you don't know that when it all happens.
Well, I'm not going to belabor the issue, but that's simple math, Mr. Moses. You know what your appropriation is. You know how many weeks the person has worked, when they're leaving, how much vacation time. That gives you, it's simple accounting. And when you move somebody over, and then you don't factor the raise in, that's when you generate a deficit. But please, don't tell me that you don't know how much it's going to cost, because it's not a huge department either. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? Roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Nuam.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
No.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
7 yeas.
Last item under the city manager's portion of the agenda. In City Council, Vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Coalition for a Better Acre Incorporated to use the premises located 5 Whiting Street in the city of Lowell for management and maintenance of site for community gardens. Be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. The city manager is authorized to enter into a license agreement with the Coalition for a Better Acre Incorporated, having its principal offices at 517 Moody Street, Lowell, Mass. 01854, to use City of Lowell property, said premises located at 5 Whiting Street in the City of Lowell, for management and maintenance of the site between May 31st, 2012 and March 1st, 2013. The license shall contain conditions as the city manager shall deem in the best interest of the City of Lowell. Second reading by title. In City Council, vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with the Coalition for a Better Acre Incorporated to use the premises located 5 Whiting Street in the City of Lowell for management and maintenance of the site for community gardens. Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. We read recently in the paper about the great job that took place with the community gardens in the back central neighborhood area. And you've seen all the smiling faces in the paper, which was once barren, derelicted, abandoned area, is now vibrant, growing productive vegetables, herbs, spices, and it's become a vital commodity, a tool in the neighborhood. This is another area of doing that. It is wonderful to see, like, people becoming gardeners and like farmers almost. It's really, I like that, and I'm very pleased to see it. Some years ago, I made a motion to ask the manager if this could be possible. At the time, we hadn't worked on it, but they were looking at ways to do that. Then a couple of years ago, Frankie Dakota made a similar motion, and so it was quite evident that this was needed. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Noon. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. I happened to go to that event. A couple of people in the neighborhood let me know it was going to go on and said, why don't you come, why don't I stop by? And I grew up down there. And that was a park that's had some problems, as Councilor Mercy said, over the years. And it was nice to go down and see the people working in the garden. When you start utilizing these parks and these areas, you get rid of a lot of the crime. Now the people are back in the parks. So I wholeheartedly agree with Councilor Mercy, and something like this can only be a plus. So.
No further discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nuam.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes.
8 yeas.
8 yeas. Now we're at reports, subcommittee reports. Councilor Kennedy, the Rules Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to report that the Rules Committee met just prior to the City Council meeting and went quickly about its business, which was approving the changing the way the agenda is set up in order that it will be in compliance with software that the City Clerk's office will be using for the agenda at some future date. The City Clerk will send out that, and this is noticed so that the City Council can vote for it according to Council Rules at the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Motion to accept report of progress. Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Martin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, we have some utility petitions. All right, first, well, only one. Pole location, National Grid, request to set a new pole at 135 4th Ave. It's the wish of the body.
Set up a public hearing for that?
Yeah, refer to a public hearing. Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor say aye. That'll be set for July 10th at 7 p.m. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. At this point, we'll take up entry into executive session. I have the following language. Pursuant to Exception 5 of the Massachusetts Open Meeting Laws, the council moves to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing charges of criminal misconduct and discuss the filing of criminal complaints in relation to the recent theft of parking meter funds, and we will return to open session following that executive session. Motion by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, on the motion, I just wanted to to make sure that I have it clear that the vote to go into executive session is in order that we can discuss the police investigation, and that any discussion that takes place in executive session that has to do with the audit that the city auditor did or the upcoming audit that's being done by outside will still be open for public dialogue. I just wanted to be clear. I didn't want for the executive session to be used to prevent any dialogue or discussion on the outside audit as we move forward.
That's my understanding. Solicitor, could you weigh in on this?
That's correct.
Okay.
Councilor Elliott.
I thought we were going to go into executive session following the meeting. I mean, we have just gone through the entire agenda and then recessed after. We have gone into executive session and then just adjourned after we have done our executive session business. It just seems like it makes sense that we do that. We finish this agenda, we finish this meeting, and then go back into executive session.
Councilor Mercer.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilor Elliott is completely right. There was a time, and it was during retirement negotiations for the health insurance, and we went in executive session while people were watching, and we didn't come back for a while, and we got our heads kicked in for it. So I think the proper procedure, and I'm not an authority here, and I'm only one person, but I completely agree with Councilor Elliott. People at home are watching this. People are in the audience. I don't know, maybe they want to hear the motions. I don't know if they're going to speak on it or what. We usually recess from the city council meeting, go into executive session and adjourn from there. When we're done, people shut it off, and that's fine. We're inconveniencing the public, in my opinion, by in midstream going there and then coming back, and it doesn't make sense to me. That's not the way that, unless the chief superintendent says, I have another meeting or something that I have to go to, we accommodate that. I understand, but he's not complaining or saying anything, and I hate to keep him here all night, but he's a public servant just like every one of us, and so unless he has an urgent meeting somewhere, I like to accommodate people, but I like to be fair to the people at home, and I don't hear any complaints, and I say continue on with the agenda and recess from here and go in after, and then let people shut off the TV or turn it on to I Spy or whatever the heck they're watching. I don't know. That's too late, but I don't know.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, there's 8 motions left on the agenda. I can do it either way. My intention is to support the chair. So whatever decision you make, I'm good to go with that.
My thought was that there's a number of motions related to this, and I wanted to make sure that people that had questions that might have a bearing on the case would get the information prior to the motions and have those answered where it was necessary to do an executive session beforehand. So you'd come back with that information in mind.
I,
But whatever the council rules is what we'll do. Council Noon.
I understand that there has been a practice in the past to conduct it the way Councilor Elliott and Councilor Rita Mercier indicated. But in these cases, there's some motion that we have here pertinent to this, the execs would answer some of the question that we have here in some of the motion. So I think going the way that the chairperson indicated might be of benefit to the maker of the motions that relating to this issue. So either way, I'm fine with it. I'm going to stay here anyway. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Let me just say that if I thought that I had a motion that would, hinder our deliberation, I would hold off for executive session, but I had talked to the city solicitor. She assures me that my motion isn't sensitive to any of that. If we do encounter that, we could hold off and delay that one till we get into executive session. I don't know what the problem with that would be.
Councilor Elliott.
Well, that's exactly, and I agree with Council Kennedy. That's exactly what I don't want to take place. Unless it's relative to a criminal investigation, which we're not going to talk about here. I have no intention of talking about that here. I want to have the full discussion about what has taken place in the parking garage, and I want to do it before we go into executive session. I don't want those answers in there, because then we're just going to come back out and do the same. I would like to have this discussion here so the public can see them, and I don't understand why we're going in after. The answers, the discussion that we're going to take place in executive session relative to criminal charges. I'm not interested, and these motions are not relative to criminal charges, so I want to stay out here, and I think we should do it now, have the discussion with these motions, and then go in and listen to the chief.
Councilor Lori.
I have 5 motions, and I can be very bland with any of these 5. I'm not going to get into anything going on, just... Go ahead.
Councilor Lori, continue.
And now I can be very non-specific, and I think everyone has seen the agenda. I think they probably have a good idea where I'm going with these, so I don't have a problem staying.
Councilor Broderick.
I think I made the motion, and I would certainly file or change that, amend it to continue through the agenda and go into executive session at the end. By the time we finish talking about this, we could be through the motion. So,
All right.
and I think last time I got blamed for going into the executive session, so I'm all set with that.
So you're amending the motion, so we'll go into the executive session at the end of the agenda.
Right.
I'll second.
Who seconded? Was that Councilor Lori? All right, second by Councilor Lori. All those in favor to delay going into executive session until the end of the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, so we'll hold off on that till the end of the meeting. That brings us to the motions. First motion by Councilor Lori. Request city manager considering entering into discussion with UML regarding leasing a yacht garage at UML during arena events.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Lori.
Thank you. And if I come close, I'll be watching the city solicitor. You can give me an evil eye if I come close. This one here is, I talked a little bit about it at the budget hearings. There's a lot of money that goes through the garages, and I thought maybe if the manager, he has a lot of partnerships with the universities, what we do, if we could come up with a set amount or an idea what we usually pull in at the gate during events at the arena or in that area, would it be wise to basically rent the arena to the university if they wanted it on that night, and we would just get a check? I don't know how many parking spaces they have. I think we usually get $5. I have a season ticket to the UMass Lowell hockey, but I don't park in the garage. We also own a lot across the street, But it was just an idea that maybe if the manager wanted to enter into discussions with the university, if the company that right now runs the university would like to have the garages, we could come up with a price that didn't hurt the city. We would get our money. That might be the way to go, is just to get a check. It might also help with traffic. If the university has a package, and I know they do for season ticket holders, they may just send a pass out where they would drive by the gates, wave it, and the traffic would move a lot quicker. But that was the idea behind the motion.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I don't know if I support this motion or I don't, but the fact remains that it's interesting. It's interesting to see which way would be more beneficial to the city. So I think it's thinking outside of the box. I remember I had made a statement because I heard that one night we didn't have any coverage there and we lost a lot of money. So having said that, this motion only makes sense to at least open up the parameters and see where we're going. What is better, to hire someone special to collect the money, they have to get benefits, this and that, or to see if the university's interested in paying us a fee to, like a lease that spot to see what monies we could make from it. So that's a very good motion, and I support the motion completely.
All right. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Laurie. City Council requests city manager or proper subcommittee consider entering into discussions with UMass Lowell about use of wastewater facilities as a source of energy.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. This motion, it revolved around a call I got from a citizen in the city who was talking about the wastewater plants as an energy source. I guess Keene, New Hampshire, produces its own energy, and we can also produce energy from, I guess, the waste that's in the wastewater facility. The reason why I put down all the proper subcommittee, it may be an advantage to the city to go on its own, to look at how much it would cost to invest in the wastewater to produce energy. Or it may be worthwhile to have the university, again, a partnership with the university, look at the wastewater. They have a lot of the engineers. They have a huge engineering department. Maybe they would want to take part in a classroom or make it part of their classroom to come down, look at it, and we would get the use of their engineering department and the feasibility of going forward with this. My understanding is the cost is, it could be quite costly to do, but again, a subcommittee could look at that. But it's just a recommendation with the manager to go up and talk with the university on many of the issues we have. And would it be something their engineering department would want to take a look at? That's it, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Laurie. City Council requests city manager consider placing the collection of money from the parking kiosks under the Lowell Police Department supervision.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. For many years, I believe the collection of money, back when we used just the meters, was under, I think, the police department. If memory serves me right, it was Officer Adrian Paquette. I could be wrong, but I think it was Adrian, yeah, just a great guy. And the police are on the street anyway. One of the ideas, again, looking at this, is putting the collection of money, cash, in two different departments. I could have easily said the Treasurer's Department, but the police have experience with it. And what you would do is have different departments collecting money. The police department, if they did it, they would generate a report to the treasurer and to the auditor's office. But it would be the beginning, just like the arena, of breaking up the cash going into one department. And I think that's only good. I think it's a small way of the city auditing the situation. And I think most communities do have the police department do it. I'm not saying it has to be a police officer. It could be an employee of the police department, but I just thought it might be something to look at. It's something we've done in the past, and was just a recommendation.
Any further discussion? Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The only thing I would say, I don't know who would collect the money. It would have to, the superintendent would have to weigh in on that. I like to see police that are out patrolling, so if they can, his decision would weigh heavily on mine. And the fact remains that whoever it would be, I would want them to be bonded if they were from somewhere else.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I seconded Councilor Laurie's motion. I'm not sure that this is exactly the way to go, but the reason I seconded the motion is I think that we're at a time when we should be looking at every option, including having the police take up the collections. And so I think that, Councilor Laurie's at least is thinking in the same direction, and that's the reason I seconded the motion. So I'm expecting the city manager would have a report on this at some point.
Councilor Elliott.
I think considering what has taken place, I understand the intent of the motion. I think I asked a couple weeks ago, do the police department still collect the coin meters?
Yeah.
They still do, right? Is that a uniformed police officer? Is it
Mr.
civilian?
Moses.
I don't know that answer. Mr. Herbert, who is now down in the parking department, maybe he can answer that.
Mr. Herbert.
If you're referring to the mechanical meters, the single-space meters...
Are there any others?
I'm sorry?
Are there any other types of meters?
Well, the kiosks are sometimes referred to.
Well, I said the
as meters.
coin-operated meters, yes. Sorry.
So the single-space meters that you're referring to, we do have somebody from the traffic division in the police department who goes through and picks those up. The kiosks themselves, they're collected by personnel in the parking department.
No, I'm speaking specifically of the meters. How many of those meters do we still have left, the single-space meters that accept coins?
Approximately 450.
450? How often are they emptied?
It varies by time of year. Also, some meters are obviously filled more quickly than others. The police department and the traffic division have, through trial and error and through years of experience, have determined which meters need to be emptied when, and so they kind of follow their own protocol.
And is it one person that empties the meter? Or
It is.
It's one person?
It is one person.
Okay. I understand the intent of the motion, but I'm not sure we want to get the police department involved in the business of, parking kiosks. So I don't really think it should be under the LPD supervision. We have a contract, and we need to work on it. But I think the system that we have needs to be improved, and I have some questions on that, but I'm not so sure we want to put that function, and it was a civilian, correct? I think he answered, it's a civilian that collects the money? Right, okay, thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I concur with Councilor Elliott. I do understand the intent of the motions. I'm not so sure that, making decisions now or having the manager look into having the police department oversee the kiosk, the best idea. But let me just have a question through the acting city manager to the auditor. Could you, give us a pro and con of having, shift from the parking department collecting the parking kiosk to the LPD? If you have any comment on that.
Madam Auditor.
Well, I think that we need to look at the overall organization and review each and every step within. There are pros and cons, obviously. But if you're talking about getting the police department involved, obviously the police department has to be wanting to be involved. So it's a discussion that we need to have going down the road to do a reorganization.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Moses?
I'd just like to say that the administration is committed to taking a look at all possibilities here. We're currently reaching out to other communities that are similar to us and that have, extensive controlled parking operations to find out what they do well, what they do not so well, how it might apply to Lowell. Are there any unique differences that Lowell has compared to some of these other communities so that we can develop procedures that are appropriate to the city of Lowell and can provide the greatest level of security possible.
Councilor Martin?
Thank you. The motion says to consider, and I'm not so sure this is the best idea, but I think that's the point, is to take a look at the operation for the manager to come back and see what makes sense. I'm not so sure leasing the Ayotte garage to the university makes sense either, but that was similarly phrased to, something that should be put under consideration. So, if this were a change in policy, I don't think I'd be supportive, but I'm certainly supportive of efforts to reconsider how certain things are done.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you again, and I thank Councilor Martin for bringing that up. These are just considerations. I came back to that one. Again, I knew some of the towns use the police department, and I thought back to when I was walking back from high school. We used to walk to school every day back and forth, and you would see the police out there, and they had the little machine, and that's why I could have easily, as I said earlier, said the treasurers or another department, but I went back to years ago seeing the police do it, and that's why I mentioned the police department. And thank you.
Councilor Elliott?
This whole kiosk thing it's really very simple. And I don't know where I think I know where the breakdown was. And every kiosk should, on a daily basis, have a printout of the receipts. What was taken in at that kiosk every day, cash or credit card? I'm presuming that there was, that these kiosks they're modern. So whoever empties it, whether it's the police department, central parking, or the parking department, when you empty the money and any receipts, you get a printout. This is how much this kiosk took in today. And you take that printout with the money and you go to the treasurer. It's simple. Then you find out how much that kiosk had and how much, it doesn't matter whether it's central parking or anyone else. And you get a deposit slip for it. And then the deposit slip is also communicated to the auditor. It's really very simple. I'm presuming that the money was taken from central parking and just went into the treasurer's office and gave them the deposit with no printout of what went into that kiosk every day. That's where the lapse is. And it was an accounting lapse and it was an internal control lapse.
No.
Otherwise, you get the receipt from the kiosk, you get the money, you go to the deposit, and there it was. Now, if the kiosk wasn't doing that and then they implemented new software, that's different. But to me, it seems very simple.
Councilor Mercer?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I don't think it's like that, although that's a simple procedure. I think it went into the bank I think it went into Enterprise Bank. I don't think that it went to the treasurer's office or the auditor or the solicitor or anywhere. But you're right. It is relatively simple that the kiosk had a receipt slip and the money or the credit card, and it should have balanced out. But when it was deposited, and I believe it was the Enterprise Bank, not the treasurer's office, not the auditor, it went into the bank. The bank didn't know, but took the money and deposited into a special account, but no receipt ever accompanied that to give checks and balance as to what took place. That's where the discrepancy was. And the thing to add to that is, let's say there's 20 kiosks. I don't know how many kiosks there are, but let's say there's 20 kiosks. Even if you had a slip and you had the coincided money or credit card, if you didn't have a slip of, if you didn't know how many kiosks there was, and you're depositing 15, but you're keeping 5 of them out, then the bank has no idea that 5 are missing. So there's another area right there. So I think the bank should have known that you have a slip, the slip has to balance the money, whatever. That's number one. And there should be 20 of these coming in, not 15, but 20. So, I mean, it's a little bit easier if you just figure it out in the checks and balances, so it doesn't matter actually anything else, but that it all balances out. And then I can't blame the treasurer or anybody else for the procedure not happening. They probably at the end get X number of dollars in the enterprise fund, and they think that that's what it's supposed to be, but thank you.
Madam Auditor, could you
Sure.
give us the procedure for the collection?
If I may, the kiosks don't create a report when they take out the vaults. What the report is created from is the software that will tell us what all the kiosks take in. There's nothing that is spit out, if you will, out of the individual kiosks.
There is not.
There isn't.
Well, that's what we were led to believe at one point.
Right, then, but the kiosks are taken out, the containers, the vault, and are brought directly to the bank. Then what happens is, the internal kiosk software should have been used as a guide for the management of the parking department to assure that all the deposits were put, in fact, in the bank. It's the internal controls within the parking garage itself to use the kiosk software to determine how much cash was taken in all the kiosks. That, in fact, was the breakdown. What happens is the parking department is watching over central parking to make sure everything is reported. And the turn-ins are done from the deposit slips to the treasury.
So the bank has no idea as to this
How many
this
kiosks
transaction.
are there? Exactly. They just know what they've collected and what they put in the bank.
So with the parking overseers, whether it be the superintendent, administrator, or whatever of the parking garage, know that a vault is missing, that a vault did not put in a deposit at all?
Yes. From the software.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you, through you to the auditor. What you're saying this evening is a little different from my understanding of this. What you're saying this evening is that there's just one tally for all of the kiosks. There's 70 kiosks. So if, for instance, somebody were to make collections at 50 of those kiosks and doesn't get to the last 20 because he had to go home early or something. So then the tally that Enterprise has, or the amount that Enterprise has, is not going to match, is it? It's not going to match what the software says.
The bank does not have the software.
No, I understand that, but if the bank
You mean if there's
has-
100?
Let me, if the bank has 50 boxes that came from 50 kiosks that were collected, then they are going to have that amount of money from the 50. They're not gonna have the amount from the other 20, because they were never picked up. But the software is not gonna report the 50 that were picked up. The software is gonna report all 70. So it's never going to be, it's never gonna be right, is it? Unless all 70 are picked up every single time, there'll always be a discrepancy. Is that correct?
The software knows how much each kiosk collects.
Well, you
Right,
just
they
said,
don't- No, it lists by individual kiosk. I was just using an example of one kiosk, okay? It knows how many kiosks are out there. It knows how many kiosks have money in it and how much money, so they know if to,
okay, so that it,
Do it or not.
so the software does tally each of the kiosks
Correct.
individually?
correct.
Okay, well, that's different from
Correct.
what I thought you said to
I'm
Councilor
sorry, I was
Mercy a
using
minute ago.
an example of one kiosk, how it gets processed.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Roll call on what?
On the motion.
On the motion from Councilor Laurie,
To consider,
consider parking,
turn it over to
placing collection of money from parking kiosks under the LPD supervision.
So why are you not saying all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye? Why are we taking a
I heard
specific?
several people that weren't necessarily in favor of it, so I just thought I'd have a roll call. I do believe I can do that.
Roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Norn.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
No.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendonça.
No.
6 yeas.
Motion carries. Next motion. By Councilor Laurie. City Council requests City Manager have proper department explore changing the pools at O'Donnell and Avenue C parks into water recreation parks.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. We do have someone who wants to speak on this motion.
We have a motion to suspend the rules by
yeah.
Councilor Laurie, second by Councilor Mercer. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay.
Okay, great. Yes, good evening. My name is Carol McCarthy. I live at 64 Blossom Street in Lowell, and I also co-chair the Sacred Heart Neighborhood Improvement Group. I want to thank Council Laurie for approaching the neighborhood group. And what he did is he asked me when I got out of school to give him a tour of our city. One of our concerns was the pool at O'Donnell Park. As the city knows, that was the only park that our section of the city has until the schools were built on it. Several years ago, I want to say at least 5 years ago, the city actually put a lot of money into the pool that's at O'Donnell's Park, opened it for one summer, and we've been closed since. The pool has not been opened, so the children in our section of the city, unless they go to the other sections of the city for the pools, have nothing for entertainment. So what I kind of said to Council Larry is, I'm looking at the makeup of the ages of children in our neighborhood, and they're all young ones. And I think the splash pad at Shed Park is awesome. Even looking at the depths of the pool at O'Donnell's, even the shallow end is way too deep for some of the children in the neighborhood. And as they go several feet over, the pool just drops to, I don't know how deep it is, but really deep. So one thought I really had was to fill the pool in and make it a splash pad for the neighborhood kids. So I thought that would be one nice motion for the kids, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on a motion? Hearing none. Councilor Laurie, did you have an amendment to your motion?
What's that?
You were considering an amendment to your
Yeah, I
motion?
was going to amend the motion. When I called it in and I put the motion in, I said the O'Donnells and the Avenue C. But I'd also like to get if we can get on the health park, they used to call it the health park up on West Middle Road. I think it's called LeBlanc.
LeBlanc Park, yes.
And also Manning Field on Boston Road. The O'Donnell's pool, I think that's about the newest in the city. And I grew up there, and I know a few of the councilors here did, and I spent many days up there. And it's my understanding Manning Field on Boston Road also has a water supply where we could possibly put a splash pad. And I look at Manning Field, that's another park that's very seldom used. And if we did something like that out there, you'd see the families come back out to the park. You'd see the families there at the splash, which would probably bring people out to the baseball park. But I'd like to throw the blank and also Manning Field into this consideration and get a cost of possibly putting water parks in these locations. Thank you.
Do we have a second to the amendment?
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the challenges the city is facing even this year, and we have faced for quite some time, and this is sort of pertinent to this motion, is lifeguards. And if there's no objection from the maker of the motion, well, the motion's already been amended, so I don't know if I could amend the amendment, but if we could just include that the manager look into the issue of lifeguards and how come we're having such a difficult time retaining lifeguards. The city puts on a lifeguard, and I only know because my daughters went through it, and we are about to begin the season, and the city is short 7 lifeguards. We trained X amount, and I can remember having this discussion a number of years ago, and one of the problems is our salary structure. The city spends money to train lifeguards, and they stay a year, and then they go somewhere else. So consequently, the recreation department is in a bind, and we're in the nice weather. The city held a training for lifeguard, and they do a good job at it. Yet now there's a concern that some of the pools may not. Well, I don't want to go there, but when you're short 7 lifeguards before the season starts, there's a problem there. So I think it'd be good to get a report on why and how we're going to keep these lifeguards. I remember years ago it was the state was paying more. I think it was about 5 years ago, and then there was a slight salary adjustment. But when we look at converting other pools, I think we have to look at how pools to splash parks. You still need lifeguards there. But there is a central issue that we need to also focus on, and that's how can we get and keep lifeguards to staff these facilities.
Okay, I believe it's a friendly amendment. Councilor Laurie accepts getting a report of the lifeguard status. Councilor Kennedy, do you concur? Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Councilor Elliott, you're all set?
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next motion by Councilor Laurie. City Council requests Mayor and/or Vice Chair call special meeting to include the manager, auditor, and treasurer on what necessary steps will be taken to ensure the proper recording of cash in the city. Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. The motion speaks for itself. One of the reasons why I made this really is right now we're meeting twice a month. I think there's been a lot of questions tonight, and I think if you try to put it in a regular meeting, we may fall short of what we really want to do. A lot of this comes out to public trust and how we're going to respond, how we're going to do things in the future. And I think having a separate meeting, we're only having 2 a month, I think would allow everyone to come in, ask their questions, have the city respond in a proper manner, and put everything at ease and as we go forward. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we reinstate the Clerk and Audit Oversight Subcommittee, specifically for exactly what Councilor Laurie said. we have a responsibility to respond in a timely manner on issues that come up from time to time, and we shouldn't have to wait for a monthly meeting or maybe even a special meeting to have this. There was always a standing subcommittee, and that was the purpose for it, that there was a structure in place, there was a unit in place to address issues that came up, similar to what has just come up with the parking department. I think it's timely. And I think when there's a mechanism in place, we don't have to wait till the end of the month or to a quarterly meeting. There's a vehicle in place to have a meeting and to respond and to get some answers and to address it, more importantly. So I'd like to make that in the form of substitute motion.
I'll second it.
Substitute motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mercer, that we reinstate the Clerk and Auditor Oversight Subcommittee.
And if the motion passes, I would like to, I was on it before, I'd like to be on it, and I think it's important that we have these, that we have a standing committee. And again, I think Councilor Laurie really hit the nail on the head in a timely basis to respond.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Kennedy. City Council requests City Manager provide City Council with weekly reports of all intra-departmental transfers that are above $20,000.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
just
Kennedy.
as briefly as I can, during the budget deliberations, it became obvious that there's a large amount of transfers that take place, and that's fine. And I understand that those do not have to be approved by the City Council. However, the City Council is entitled to at least see those transfers, and so that's really what I'm asking for, is just a report of transfers above 20,000. The motion says weekly, but if bi-weekly was going to make more sense, or even monthly, probably it would be okay. It's just, but more than monthly probably wouldn't be okay. And then, and the other thing that came up was, several weeks ago, this City Council voted for a transfer of $165,000 in overtime for the police department, and the city manager, in his narrative in presenting that transfer, indicated that a good chunk of that money was going to go towards the police downtown. But in fact, only 19 grand went for the police downtown. But what then happened was a portion of that money, a significant portion of that money, was used for salary and wages permanent, which I still have no objection to in principle. It suggests that I feel like the transfer should have been split so that there was a certain amount going to overtime, and if everybody knew that a portion of that money was going to be going to salary and wages permanent, then part of the money should have been transferred into there so that the council knew. And it wasn't handled that way. And so anyways, what this motion does is just ask that the City Council be made aware of all transfers over $20,000 in a regular and timely basis. That's all. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the point of the police department transfer, because as I recall that discussion, there was a large transfer in the police department. I think the chief was pretty direct about where it was going that evening. It appeared to me it was approximately the same amount that we had spent on downtown patrols for the entire year. Some of that had been covered in the existing overtime funds, and maybe it was just coincidental that the amount we were transferring that evening roughly equaled the amount we were spending on the increased downtown patrols through the entire year. Regardless, I think the fact that we had to spend that money on the downtown patrols is indicative of a problem that I think we should be working on. But that was my understanding of the discussion. We knew some of that money was going to cover things like dispatch and things the chief talked about. But we did spend, over the course of the full year, an amount close to the amount that was transferred that night.
Well, I don't want to get into a discussion about that.
Council
What
Kennedy.
what we didn't know is that any of that money was going into salary and wages permanent. That was not, nobody mentioned that night. And I guess that's what I'm pointing out about that transfer, is that there should have been a little more transparency than what there was on that transfer. That's all.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests city manager enforce noise ordinance relative to car portable stereos.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy.
I know the
Councilor Elliott.
chief. I know the chief is sitting there saying, "How am I going to do it?" But it really is a nuisance, and I'll say it's a nuisance to me. I have gotten calls from constituents. People have also stopped me on the street, and I'm sure it's on everybody's minds. And it's these car stereos. They drive through the city, and even when you're at a stoplight, when your vehicle is vibrating from their music, it's annoying. And we do have a noise ordinance, and I remember when it was adopted, and this was one of the issues. And I don't know how the police officers do it. You have to catch them. But I think I think we have to send a message somehow, and I'm not even sure. And I was going to ask the question: can we issue a citation for something like this, Chief? These radios, they're clearly a disturbance. And this came from an elderly, just by way of background, this came from an elderly person living in one of the complexes, and it's on sort of a busy street in South Lowell, and they're awoken at night with these, she said, these boom boxes, and that's what they are. So, Chief, can they be cited for...
Yes, an officer can write a motor vehicle citation to an operator of a motor vehicle that is, harsh and objectionable noise. So it could be the squealing of tires, it could be the loud radio, it could be blowing the horn excessively. That type of thing could be, an officer could issue a citation for those violations. That's correct.
It's the summertime, and I think that's probably when...
Sure.
It's more noticeable when the car windows are down and people are out more and they're driving around. But it is an attractive nuisance, and I know you get so many things on your plate during the summertime. But if we could try to enforce and send a message, the word goes out. Kids do communicate somehow that we're not going to tolerate this because it is a quality of life. I don't like it. But I don't like the noise, but I also don't like some of the music that they play with such profound profanity. When you're driving with your kids, and every other word is it's a curse, swear word. It's not right. So anyway, that's the motion. I said I would bring it forward. I do think that we should try to do as much as we can to let these kids know you want to play the music and listen to it. Fine, within reason. I don't want to hear it, and people in the city shouldn't have to tolerate it. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. And the last motion of the evening, Councilor Mercier. City Council requests City Manager provide a report on what steps will be in place to reassure the public that oversight will be given and that monies will be monitored correctly in the parking garages, kiosks, and in fines, etc. Second by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Mercier.
And so the motion clearly speaks for itself, and I'd like this council and the public to be reassured that steps are in place so that this doesn't happen again. That's it. Thank you.
Any further? Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to you, I guess. I think it's important that the public feel confident about how the city handles money as well. Recently, the city council received a memo from the city auditor. And in that, the city auditor described how she had met with people from the parking department and with the city treasurer regarding the exactness of the reporting between the money that was in the kiosks and what the software was reporting, and indicated that it was too exact, so that it kind of red flagged the whole way that it set up some red flags about the way the procedures were being followed in the parking department. And that was in April, in early April. So it would be at a time when there was still 6 months left on the existing contract with Central Parking, and also at a time when the city was 2.5 years into the contract, and before that, the city had another contract, which I believe was for an additional 3 years with Central Parking. And so it would have been theoretically 5.5 years into the city's contract with Central Parking. What bothers me about that is if you just ignore the fact that there was any money missing, and it was just the idea that the procedures were not followed. And if those procedures are set up to ensure that there's confidence in the accounting and reporting of all the funds that come in, most of which is cash, then I don't understand why the city auditor and/or the city treasurer didn't do one of two things. First of all, go back and see whether or not whether the parking department had been reporting in a similar fashion for the whole 5.5 years, or take corrective action to make sure that they started following the procedures correctly for the last 6 months of the contract. And so at some point, I would like to get a report from the city auditor and from the city treasurer as to exactly why what they did, according to the memo, is really nothing, except for to shut off Central Parking from their own accounts so that they could just look at the accounts and that's it. I don't see that as being corrective action, and I don't see that as being investigatory in terms of like looking back and seeing whether this was just occurring for 3 months or 6 months or 2 years or 3 years or 5.5 years. But that's a problem to me, whether there's money missing or no money missing. That's the whole idea of collecting that money, and the reporting and accounting part of it is dependent on the procedures. And those procedures, as Councilor Elliott said a little earlier in the evening, are somewhat simple, but they're simple if they're followed correctly. And if they're not followed correctly, then you run into problems. And so at some point, if we could get a report on that, if the City Council can get a report on that as well, on that specific point, on why nothing was done, I would appreciate it. And I assume that most of the City Council would appreciate it as well. Thanks.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Madam Auditor, when you identified this problem in April, why didn't you bring it to the City Council? I mean, you work for the City Council, and there was actually a meeting on April 24th, a couple weeks later, and we didn't hear anything about this.
If I may.
Madam Auditor.
If I may. The reason we met at that point in time was to close down bank accounts. It's a process to close down bank accounts because you have credit cards coming in, so you can't just shut off a bank account. That was the major reason for that meeting. The secondary reason is that a few days before we had found duplicate deposits. Now, that happens quite often. That is on its surface, any indication of any theft. It's an indication of sloppiness. So we discussed that also at the time and found out literally what had happened and how that had happened. Now, we were, at that time, convinced that that was no issue. There was no indication at that time that there was any theft at all. It would appear on the surface that they were adhering to all our policies and procedures, those procedures that the council has a copy of. And so there was no reason, there was no red flag. The only reason I mentioned it to the council here was I wanted them to know that we do meet with department heads all the time, and we had met with the parking director and the management team at Central Parking. And this is what we discussed. And we found nothing at that time. But I just wanted you to know that we had met with them.
Accountants and auditors are trained to look for red flags, to look for transactions that may lead to something. And if you saw that it was sloppy, that should have been a red flag. And I think as the auditor, you should have triggered or initiated an audit. I mean, considering the problems that we had just gone through in the clerk's office, that is the red flag. That's what you look for, and you find out if there is sloppiness or something else associated with it. You know, in September of last year, a couple of councilors filed motions regarding cash policy and procedure for each department that accepts cash. And you responded.
Correct.
And that it's the city's policy that the treasurer collector office is responsible for the entry of all cash receipts into the Munis system. It goes on, the auditor will conduct ongoing surveys to identify, analyze, and manage the risk of asset misappropriation and fraud within each department. Right there, that was a flag. It was right there, it was right in front of, it was given right to you. And I don't understand why nothing was done. In that policy, parking garage receipts, this is the report that we got from you. The city policy is that the garage personnel have the authority to make deposits at the bank that are made daily. Credit card payments also accepted by the garages. Shouldn't that, okay, you make deposits, but how do you account for what was put into the kiosk? How do you know? What do you compare against? I mean, that to me, again, is the red flag that we're looking at. So, and then in November, I filed the motion. I got a report from you. November 17th, and I asked that we get quotes from Powers and Sullivan on doing an audit in all the departments and look at to look at the cash issues and the procedures. And you indicated you question the cost versus the return for such a contract. I think the new procedures should be enough to limit our risk. I think a periodic review by my department on quarterly reports should be enough to rely on, and future contracts with auditors should include 2 or 3 departments to be completed yearly. I think you should have had this done. Now, I understand, your comment that, well, it's going to be $100,000. Well, you're looking at the parking department, and Melanson and Heath included a breakdown that we could have picked out just certain departments. We didn't have to spend $100,000. I actually don't even see parking in here. I'm going to presume that it's under agency funds, but I don't know because there's not a breakout. But that was $8,500. Why didn't we proceed? Why did you not proceed immediately with an audit? And I know you called me yesterday and you said that the central parking is now initiated their own audit, their own investigation, and there are other things going on. You have Powers and Sullivan going in. Well, why didn't we do it then? We could have prevented this. Now we have to spend the money to try to get back what we lost.
Madam Auditor.
If we're talking about a scale of errors, we're talking about they over-reported a couple $100. They're taking in millions of dollars. We asked what happened. We were satisfied that someone had made a mistake. They weren't under-reporting from the documentation. They were over-reporting. That is not a red flag in any auditing handbook. Our
Nope.
policies and procedures are in place. They are working. Unfortunately, there's no policies or procedures that can foresee or immediately reveal when multiple layers of an organization all agree to hide a theft.
The policies and procedures in place are not working. When there is a theft of $37,000 plus, the procedures are not working, Madam Auditor. Had we not had an individual come forward, we would never have found this. I read, and first of all, I don't know why the manager is sending us a letter. You should be sending us a letter. You should be corresponding with us, not the city manager. You work for us. You don't work for the city manager. I know you work for him in Chelmsford. It was a different structure of government, but you work with us, and I do agree with. I think that we were left in the dark. And had we not had a citizen come forward to give us information, I firmly believe we never would have known about this. Even because you did know about it and you still didn't come to us.
I did not know about it.
Well, you knew about something else. You knew that there was still some issues in that parking department. And first and second, in addition to that, I don't understand how we would accept a check on a monthly basis from Enterprise
We don't.
as a result of central parking. Well, you tell me, I asked you earlier, are there receipts from the kiosk with the receipts going to the treasurer's office? And you said, no. Someone said we were getting a check from Enterprise.
No, we don't get a check from Enterprise. Enterprise deposits it in the bank.
Okay.
And the
How are you
parking-
going to validate what was put into the kiosk? Why wouldn't anybody question, here's a check from Central Parking or from Enterprise Bank? We don't know what it's for, but it's an amount.
Because there are internal controls in the parking department. That's why we have city employees there. That's why the department is run by a city employee whose job it is to check on central parking and to safeguard the city's assets.
So did that employee get a daily receipt of how much was taken in at the kiosk and how much was brought in?
Did which employee?
Madam Auditor, the employee that is accepting the receipts from the kiosk.
I still don't understand you.
When the kiosk is emptied on a daily basis, there should be a receipt on how much that kiosk took in. And then there's the amount of either credit cards or cash taken in.
Just as a point of clarification, one, we're probably better off this evening to not speak to any specific employee, but we can certainly continue along your discussion. But it's just in terms of officials at the parking department as opposed to any particular individual. And as far as the receipts again from the kiosks, the kiosk itself isn't going to spit out a receipt. What's going to be taken from the kiosk is really just the vault. And the way the system was intended to work, which is why the system really is near foolproof, but it just can't withstand this type of layered compromise to it. But what's taken out of that kiosk is a vault, and that vault is brought to the bank. And at the bank, that's who has the key to that vault. The person picking up the vaults does not possess a key. Only the bank has the key, and there is presumably maybe one other key that is maintained by a city official. When that happens, the bank then records what was deposited, what was taken out of that vault. That becomes the deposit statement. that deposit statement is sent back to the parking department. What the parking department also has, as a result of this system, is not a hard copy receipt from the kiosk, but because of the software, these kiosks will each produce their own internal receipt. And that's information that, again, the parking department would have. They would have that information. And it's from both of those source documents, the deposit slip from the bank, as well as the report that's run off the kiosk, that is in the possession of the parking department. And with those two source documents, the parking department then will fill out or populate its turn-in sheet, which then goes to the treasurer's office. What the treasurer's office doesn't have, not for the parking department and not really, and the treasurer's here, she can speak to this tonight, they don't have the actual source documents.
Well, there is the weakness. That's what the treasurer needs. How is the treasurer going to know how much went into the kiosk and how much is being deposited? She has no idea. She's just getting a check. It could be for anything.
Right, they wouldn't get the checks. And in fact, even, for example, under our contract, the Central would provide the parking department with all of those source documents that they would then collect from the parking garages, separate from the meters. Those source documents would include things like checks, it could be cash, it could be other deposit statements. And all of those source documents are brought to the department. They stay at the department level. And it's only when you'd have an audit that those source documents are looked at. Same would be true, say, with the building department, with receipts for building permits or any sort of permit like that. That information, and maybe if it's okay with the council, maybe the treasurer could just briefly speak to this. That information, those source documents, are not typically transmitted to the treasurer's office. What the treasurer does is rely on the information in the turn-in sheet, and the reconciliation that takes place would be, at the treasurer's level, would be from the turn-in sheet to the bank statement that the treasurer's office would get.
Councilor Elliott, you want to? All right, if we could have the treasurer tell us how the reporting occurs now and prior to the discovery of the theft.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask one question? How long have we had these kiosks? I know there was a smaller number. When were they first introduced in the city?
2004.
2000, so we've had them for 8 years?
2008, April of 2008.
So we've had them for 4 years.
Madam Treasurer.
The process is that the money, as Chris was saying, the vaults are taken out of the kiosks. The kiosks, those vaults are then taken to the bank. The bank is the one who opens them, and they count the money. Back at the parking department, a report is run from the computers. That's the receipt. There is no physical receipt that comes off of the kiosk. It's a report that's run back at the office. The report is run, that is done by a metrics company.
When was that implemented, that software system?
I'd have to check with the department. I wasn't here, I'm sorry.
Does anybody know? Somebody who's been here for 4 years. Madam Auditor?
It's was there at least in 2009 on. I'm sure as soon as the kiosks were put in place, that the software wasn't, they had to test it.
It would have come with the kiosks, right?
Right, but it had to be tested and all that.
Those reports are run. It is up to the department to make sure that whatever those reports are is what is deposited in the bank. They can verify that by the deposit ticket because the deposit ticket is sent to the department, back to the parking department. What they send over to the treasurer's office is the deposit ticket along with a turn-in sheet. It's called the State Form 910. They've turned that into me. They turned one copy into me, a copy goes to the auditor, and they keep a copy for their own records. So all the source documents are kept within the department level. I verify the deposit that they have sent to me on their turn-in, Form 910, State Form. I compare that to the bank statement to make sure that they have reported everything, so that we have reported everything to the general ledger. That's how we balance the bank statement, and the treasurer balances the bank statement, and then we balance the cash from the bank statements to the general ledger. That's the responsibility on my side, that's the responsibility on the auditor's side, as far as the turn-ins go and its deposits into the bank. The department head level, whether it's the building department, the city clerk's office, whatever, they keep their source documents so that if we need to go in and do an audit, that's when we will go look for their source documents. What is the backup to this deposit? Usually that's done when we're doing an external audit.
Well, right, and the other, the other departments, there's a paper trail. There is, there's a numbered receipt, and we instituted
There's
that in
only
the
from
clerk's
certain
office.
departments, sir.
You're not getting that in a parking kiosk.
Excuse me?
You're not going to have that paper trail in a parking kiosk.
It's within the department. The parking department would have that paper source. They would have those reports.
No, I understand. I get, my point was, and I'm not going to belabor it, my point is, we're not going to have a receipt for every individual that deposits money into that. We'll just have a general total. But you're saying you get that transmittal from the kiosk.
The transmittal, there's no the transmittal from the kiosk is done from a software, computer software.
Got it.
That you can go in and they will enter in and say, give me the reports for that particular day. That is kept at the parking department.
That doesn't go to you.
No, it doesn't go to me.
Why doesn't it?
It doesn't need to go to me. That's a source document. It would be like every building permit. I do not need copies of every building permit, even though the building permit may be $15,000 and there's a check that's turned in with it. I don't need to know what that building permit is. That's not part of my responsibilities. My responsibilities is to make sure that the cash is in the bank and that it's reported to me what has been deposited in the bank.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
If I may ask just a brief question. Madam Auditor, the reporting software from the kiosk now, has there been a change in who generates or gets copies of those reports?
Well, it is now going to the treasurer because we had the issue. So she's getting all the source documents so we can double check all the cash from the source documents until we have the structure in place over the parking garage to be assured that all the security and everything is being double checked by the department head.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Motion is before us. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. All that's left now is bring forth the executive session once again. Pursuant to exemption 5 of the Massachusetts open meeting laws, the council moves to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing charges of criminal misconduct and discuss the filing of criminal complaints in relation to the recent theft of parking meter funds. And at this point, we would not return to public session. We will adjourn from the executive session. Motion by council.
Before we leave, I'd just like to make a point.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll give you time to do that. Let me
Okay.
just get, it's a motion by
Yes, that's
Council
right.
Mercer, second by Council Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Do we need a roll call? I'm sorry, we're gonna need a roll call on that, so, roll call?
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Counsel Dewan.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendonça.
Yes. And before we go into executive session, Council Laurie, just want to make a quick announcement.
Thank you. Brian Gagnon, former Lowell High runner, is at the Olympic trials. He's running the 1,500 meters. He's the son of Karen Gagnon, who is a member of the Law Department staff, and just want to wish him well and the best of luck. That's it.
Well,
A
we're going
motion
into
to
executive
recess.
session. We're going to adjourn from there. So thank you all that are present.